Profit Voice, and we're telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. KC Cares is the intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. This KC Cares segment is brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. My name is Ruth Baum-Biggis. The Kauffman Foundation is a shining star in the philanthropic constellation across the country and probably around the world. Founded in 1966 by Ewing Marion Kauffman, noted entrepreneur and humanitarian, today the foundation is focused on preparing people for success in their jobs so that everyone has the opportunity to achieve, prosper, and do well. Well, the foundation is grounded in principles of racial equality, diversity, and inclusion, all aspirations of its founder. The Kauffman Foundation is more than $2.5 billion in assets that it invests in the most important projects and organizations focused on people and building practical and workable solutions to today's challenges. Today, the foundation has a new leader at the helm. It's DeAngela Burns-Wallace, whose resume is packed with incredible experiences and accomplishments, including stints in state government, the Foreign Service, and higher education. She's won numerous prestigious awards, as well as served and serves on various boards. A lifelong student and a higher education advocate, Dr. Burns-Wallace holds degrees from Stanford, Princeton, and the University of Pennsylvania, as well as a faculty appointment at the University of Southern California. Dr. Burns-Wallace is more than her resume. She's a Kansas City native, a working mom, and a daughter of older adult parents. For this Ask the Expert episode, we're so delighted to welcome Dr. Burns-Wallace. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be a part of this conversation today.
Well, we would think that everybody knows what the Kauffman Foundation is all about and what somebody in charge does, but I thought it'd be a good place to start to talk a little bit about what your responsibilities are for, helming this auspicious organization.
Yeah. So, like any other president and CEO, you spend your time handling meetings and meetings and meetings, but in a good way. The work of this foundation and the Kauffman Foundation is really about empowering communities, about being in places and spaces where we are working to break down systemic barriers, where we are working to help communities with solutions so that they have the power to control their economic stability, their economic prosperity and growth. And so our investments over time, particularly over the last few years in education and entrepreneurship in this region and also around the world, has really been about how do we help ensure that more people have access to opportunities that allow them to have that control over their own economic future. Through that, sitting at the helm of the organization, it means that, particularly right now, that it's about us being in line with the communities that we serve, that we're able to understand and match those needs of that community with the investments that we have, with the research and the learning that we do, with the convenings that we host and that we bring into various conversations. So my role on a day-to-day is to listen, is to learn, is to ensure that we are in collaboration, in partnership, in community, to be able to help those that need that access, need to be able to access those opportunities that historically there have been barriers to equitable access.
Gosh, I think back, 1966 is when Mr. K started this journey. And you would think by now we would have made these great strides and great leaps, which we have to some extent, but still so much work to be done. What can you share at this point? What is the state of the Kauffman Foundation? And under your leadership, what kind of priorities, focus points are out there for you?
So I would say that but also around the nation in conversations around access and opportunity and economic prosperity. I don't see that going away for us. I think it is part of the priorities if we think back to Mr. K and the work that he wanted to happen around the country. He said in some of his remarks that we would find solutions to tough issues here in Kansas City and to be a model for the nation. And we continue to work with our community partners, whether it is peer funders, nonprofit organizations, those on the civic side, our public sector partners, educational partners, to understand the circumstances and issues in our community, and then again to solution around them. Right now, that's a part of the work that we're doing. We are in, as many organizations go through when you change leadership, a strategic planning phase. And so, like any other leadership change, when you have that, it actually creates an opportunity for you to refine the work. And for us, we have a beautiful legacy of the investment in the work that we've done in and around the community and around the nation. And in this moment, it allows us to better understand that legacy and its impact. It allows us to kind of stand on that legacy. But the beauty of doing strategic planning for your organization is that you don't have to be constrained by that legacy. It informs, it helps you think about, but our work and thinking about what does this work need to evolve into in the next 5 to 7 years to continue to meet the needs of the communities that we serve. That for us in this moment is what strategic planning is all about. And it allows us to refine our funding priorities coming out of this work.
Where are you in that process?
So we are kind of trugging along. What I will say is that we are close. Our hope is that as we move through our strategic planning, that we are able in the near future to talk about what those priorities are. And again, we are grounded in education and entrepreneurship and the work that we have invested in over the last few years. And we know that that will continue to be a part of the work that we do going forward. But the question is, what does that work look like from a future lens, not kind of a backwards lens? So we are just kind of thinking about our own horizon of in this spring. We're in a place and space where we will be able to talk about what those strategic priorities are going forward, looking to set a 2030 vision for the work that helps to drive our direction. And we'll be excited to share that coming soon.
Well, we can't wait to share what you do as well. That's got to be invigorating to come into an organization, as you say, is built on a legacy of a man who was larger than life in life, and I think is even larger, after that. Anybody who met Mr. K, I think would agree with that. But how fun to get in there and like dabble, dream, kind of, and so are you bringing lots of folks to the table? Is this an exercise of board and staff? How does it work?
It is an exercise with and in partnership community. So we have, over the last few months, spent time in various communities with partners, bringing them to the table, asking them in different ways. And so as I started in this role, we did an open house where we opened the doors of the foundation and welcomed over 300 partners to an evening of just celebration. And that night, even, we launched a survey asking them, as we start to think about our strategic planning, what are some of the priorities? Where do we need to align? Where do we need to be careful? But then we built on that, and we then pulled together key stakeholders in the community at various levels, all throughout the greater Kansas City region, and a few of our national partners. And we asked them similar questions, going a little bit deeper, right? We started to talk about, where is this work and where's our work been? And where does it need to go? How does that fit fit with the work that you're doing and your strategic priorities and alignment? And how can we support and how does it align? So those voices have all been a part of shaping the work as we go forward, but also our team. And so we have an amazing, dedicated group of associates that work at the foundation, and they have also been integral in this work. Sometimes when you do strategic planning, and as someone who was a strategic planner and would come into other organizations and do this work with them, a lot of times you start at the leadership team, right? You take that CEO and their executive team and you put them in the room and they're like, all right, what are your priorities and how do we want to structure it? Then you roll it down to the team and say, okay, here's the priorities. Like, what do you all think and how do we tweak them? We didn't do that. We put all 80 plus, we are around about 84 associates in a room together. And we kicked off our strategic planning process together with all of us starting to design and to think about what should be these headlines that we're working toward. Who are the communities that we want to ensure that we are serving? What are the outcomes and impacts that we want to see in this work as we move forward? And every single member of our foundation staff was in the room as we started that conversation. Then we did the same thing with the board, took them through the similar exercises, right? So it has been a wonderful journey to see the evolution of this work and to hear and to work with people who have said to me as we are getting further along and starting to test some of our ideas and make sure we're going back to those and say, okay, do you hear yourself in the work that's coming out of this? You know, as we're starting to shape some of our goals and levers, are you hearing what you put in? And to hear people tell us internally and externally, I see myself in it. I see what I gave as something that was taken into consideration. It means that we're on the right path. We still have a ways to go, right? But that idea that we've built a process where people have felt that they have been able to give really good feedback and insight, and that we are truly echoing that back and how we are crafting. Again, still testing some things, still making sure that we have that alignment, but it is good to hear along the way from various stakeholders, internal and external, that they believe that our process even has ensured that various voices are being taken into consideration.
Oh, I'm so excited now to hear all about this and how validating for your associates to know that they're not just sitting there waiting for things to come trickling down, but percolate up. I want to switch for a minute and take you and our audience to what I was able to learn. We're talking with DeAngela Burns-Wallace. She is the CEO, the woman in charge at the Kauffman Foundation, and from personal observation, very vivacious and exciting. And I want you to know that I have my sparkly tennis shoes on. This lady's got style. At any rate, I want to talk about leadership. You did a presentation for the Midwest Center for Nonprofit Leadership, and there were 4 areas that you spoke about that I thought were just really enlightening for those people in the room. And I wondered if you might share those 4, and I could go and give everybody a sneak peek. It was be kind, be ready, be great, be intentional.
Yeah.
And how that became your package of leadership.
Yeah. So for me, when we do this work, and when I do this work, my career has always been in public service. So I'm a public servant from day one. And I bring that with me as I move into this space, this philanthropic space, because I believe that our work is in service as well, right? And, but irrespective, there's something about, for me, leaders that we really can shape how our organizations move, how we are motivated or unmotivated, the impact that we have. And I love being able to join, the Midwest Center for Nonprofit Leadership's event, because I love when we take the time to be, one of my B's, be intentional about thinking about our own leadership, right? I say that it's really important that we have to create capacity and space to be intentional. I start with the end and work my way back, because we are our best selves when we give ourselves that grace and space to be creative, right? We are our best selves when we have the time to think deeply and thoughtfully about the work that we do. And if we get caught up in the day-to-day operations of just moving things over and over and over, we are not bringing our best selves to our leadership. And that means we're not our best selves for our teams, which then our teams can't be the best selves for those that they serve and what they are trying to deliver. Right. So when we talk about being intentional, particularly as a leader, being intentional about your time, your space, how you move, how you show up, what you share can be a true game changer because you never know who is looking at you, watching you as a model, listening to you, being inspired by you. Leaders that I have worked under and I've learned so well from are those who didn't do it well because you learn what you don't want to do. Right. And who you don't want to be in those moments. Right. So being intentional is something that is really, really near and dear to me. Being kind, going back to that beginning of that list, the way that we show up and being kind, being human, being authentic, being real in our spaces is really, really important. As leaders, we set the tone of how we move to and through spaces, how our teams feel about the work that they do, those that we serve. And so it does not take much to be kind, but it is one of the most powerful things a leader can be in terms of how they show up and how they engage, both with peers, with their teams, and with those that they serve. And it really has tremendous impact to the work, right? Be ready is something that I love because I do believe as we do this work, being ready just means that we are positioning ourselves always to be ready for the opportunity, that we've done the work, that we've challenged ourselves, that we have invested in team members and that next level of leadership so that they're ready to take advantage of the opportunities that are available, right? And so this concept of being ready is something that really is a way that as leaders we should walk, ready for the opportunity, ready for the partnership, ready for the challenges, ready to engage. But to do that, you got to prepare, right? You have to make sure that you are putting yourself in places and spaces where you're learning, where you're being challenged, where you're growing. You can't just be ready overnight. You have to put in the work. And as a leader, that can sometimes be a challenge for us because we have to create space, again, to invest even in ourselves and be intentional, investing in that next level of leader so that when I talk about be ready, it's both us as an individual, but also our organizations, right? And if we're not ready, our organizations can't be ready. And if we haven't done the work, our organizations can't be ready. And then that be great, it can be great, it can be bold, right? Like showing up in the work with a manner of just excellence, right? This idea that we are going to do good work and that we take up space because we are ready to lead and engage and lean in, and that we can sometimes be bigger than our dreams. And the important piece of that is not about us, but when we are bigger than the dreams because we are in service, it means we are dreaming big for the communities that we serve. It means that we are pulling new and innovative ideas and creative ways to deliver, to serve, to create space and solutions for those who we are trying to serve and that those that our work has the most impact on. So we have to be great because when we are great, it means that we are having a deeper level of impact. The greatness is not about us as individuals. It's about how we do the work, how we show up. So I hearkened it that more into the Beatitudes, right? And so that these are ways in which you live your life. These are ways in which you show up and people understand how you move to and through. And as a leader, we need to take time to make sure that we are thinking about how we lead because it truly impacts what we do and those that we serve.
I'm ready. Let's go. I'm ready. And I'm so grateful that you shared that, because I think it's something that can translate to any nonprofit, any organization of any size.
Mhm.
And I love how earlier you used the word grace, and allowing ourselves some grace, to not be necessarily great every day all the time, but finding some space to be able to kind of sit and live in that. So thank you so much for that.
No, it is one of those things. Grace is my word, and people know intentional and grace. Like those are things that like just sit with me. But grace is necessary. It's necessary for us as leaders. It's necessary that we give it. It's also necessary that we receive it in the work that we do. And it is something that I think that we don't have enough of right now in our society, but it makes
Oh
us
boy,
better. It really, really does.
that is for sure. The foundation's website, I think, has a lot of language that talks about opportunity,
Mhm.
equity,
Mhm.
community.
Mhm.
Can you share with us a little bit of the importance of those and how they intersect?
Mhm. So what I will say is that part of that harkens back to Mr. K, right? When he talked about the work of the foundation, he specifically talked about the work being that we were looking for solutions, that we were working to take down systemic barriers for those that traditionally that those barriers block their access, block their opportunities, or that their ability. So when we use, that language, it's an important piece of kind of a nod and a recognition that our work is not just about kind of overall economic prosperity and the greater good, but it is about gap closing. It is about, creating equitable spaces. It is about looking at systemic, structures and policies and, conversations, and ensuring that we are working to invest and to find solutions and to convene conversations that help us better understand and to dismantle, some of those pieces that systemically have created barriers or created siloed lanes where, okay, this group of individuals can access this set of resources, but not this set of resources, right? So those words, I think we use them, opportunity, equity, community, in different types of ways, but it's the idea, the concept that the work that we are doing is about how do you increase, amplify, newly identified opportunities for communities that, from an equitable lens over time, have not had an equitable access to those types of opportunities. And then that means those communities are ones in which we serve, that a lot of our work is targeted on, that we are looking for partners that do that work, that impact those communities, so that we are, again, being a part of the solutions to break down those barriers. It's not necessarily like us doing the work always in community, but it's and I say that because our work, a lot of our work is us investing, right? And it's investing in other entities, because those other entities are the ones who are in those communities that are removing barriers on a day-to-day basis. They're in those communities that are working and standing alongside those that know what that community needs. And again, we play a role sometimes of amplifying, right? Of doubling down into an entity that we know is going to have a certain type of deep impact in a particular community, in a particular space, a particular group of individuals, or a sector, like a lot of the work that we've done in the entrepreneurship sector, like knowing that business ownership, creation, profitability, sustainability, and having that in the hands of the communities that traditionally haven't had access to capital or the starting of entrepreneur, that those business spaces and places. That is that through line of when you talk about opportunity and equity and community, that's when it comes together in a beautiful way.
I have so many questions and so little time. We're going to have you back. This is a tremendous job. You have a tremendous resume. How are you pulling from past experience to inform current and future experience?
Every day and 3 times a day, right? I've had a career where I have been in federal government, state government, higher education. I've served on numerous boards and commissions and with organizations and still do in various capacities. What I will say is, and let's not forget, I am born and raised from this community, grew up
Yes.
on 66. That is also a piece of what helps inform the work that I do. It's all of my lived experiences. But every day, what I try to do is I think about the lessons I've learned, whether it's in making the connections and understanding those connections and how I leverage them into the work and how we frame our work, to understanding communities. I have lived and worked all over the world. And being a diplomat for a part of my career, you live and work in other countries and you sit in different places, right? So every day I work to make sure that I'm pushing myself to say, am I bringing my own, or am I ensuring that I am listening to broad perspectives as we think about the work? But also, my work in the public sector across my career has been about tackling issues and looking at how you allocate resources, and whether those are dollars, it might be policy, it might be technical assistance, it might be capacity building. Like, that's the type of work I've done in various different environments. And it is a synergy to the work that we do in different ways and that we fund into. So when I say I tap into my past work like every day, I mean it. And then sometimes I literally tap into it in that I will pick up my phone and text someone and say, hey, we are thinking about such and such. You know anybody who's doing that? Is there some research we need to look into? Is there somebody I should call? And that text can span from that colleague who is sitting at the Department of Defense right now as an assistant secretary and shaping work, to a really close friend who has been my best friend since 7th grade, but she is a senior leader in healthcare here in Kansas City right now today and transforming work over at St. Luke's Hospital, right? So like it runs the gamut of all of those lived experiences that I try to leverage into the work that we want to get done for the betterment of the community.
Well, I say Kansas City is so lucky, first of all, to have you as a native daughter. Second of all, to have you at the helm of the Kauffman Foundation. And I think it's a real transitory time in society in general. So we are so grateful, and grateful that there's a listener there, which is just wonderful. So thank you for spending time with us.
Oh, thank you for having me, and welcome the opportunity to come back. I will say, particularly for your population, if I can do one quick kind of shout out, in the
Sure.
fact that people may not realize, but this is the 25th anniversary of our building and the opening of the conference center. And so I am trying to take every opportunity that we can to remind, particularly the nonprofit community, if you are a 501c3, you know that our conference center is free for you to hold meetings. And if you have, of course, your food and beverage is something that we covered in cost, but that is also something we try to keep at a reasonable level so that that is not a barrier. But I want to highlight it, after 25 years, when that facility was created, it was specifically and very intentionally as a tool for the convening of our nonprofit community, so that they had a space that they felt was their own to do their work, where they didn't have to pay for it. And so we want to continue to that celebration of what that tool is into the work. So I say to those who are listening of the KC nonprofit community, just remember that the conference center, the Kauffman Conference Center, is your home, and a place that we hope that you will use to to convene, to meet, small meetings, big meetings. I mean, we have multiple rooms. You can do a very small group of like your board or a small conversation, or you can, book out the very large room where you could have 250, 300 individuals as part of a conversation. But just please check us out because it is a tool that we are finally getting close to our pre-pandemic levels, but we're still not there, which lets us know there is still more need in the community for that utilization of space. So please think of us as a home and a tool for the community.
We're happy to let you plug away on that. Thank you to the Kauffman Foundation, and to check out information on it, it's www.kauffman.org. And you can spread the love and find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio, and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. Don't forget, Saturday mornings, you can catch us at 8 a.m. on ESPN 1510 a.m. and 94.5 FM. Thank you for joining us on KC Cares.